You looked at Richard Petty. He went too long. He burst into flames in Atlanta, crashed out. You look at somebody like Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt, um, all these athletes. They're so great. They're so good that they don't have any no people. Uh, I don't know if the kids grew up and left because, sometimes the kids are the only one that can tell you, hey, Dad, what are you doing? You know, my kids, my daughter, Brooke, yeah, I know I wasn't a great NASCAR driver, but, my daughters have crushed me before. My daughter, Brooke, she said, Dad, she goes, we don't care if you win another race. We want our dad. So is it worth, uh, you know, ignoring your children, ruining, your children and their love with you? They need you during these times. And you look at your wife, to smooth it over. I don't know my dad. Why don't you know your dad? Well, because all he did was he was on the road playing football, baseball, whatever the hell it was. So, my brother Rusty, we're watching my dear friend Kyle Petty, which I'm going to be on Kyle Petty's charity ride in 2023. I love Kyle. But Kyle was running bad at the end of his career at Atlanta, which Atlanta was a bad track for me too. And I looked at Rusty and I'm watching this Cup race and I said, why is Kyle Petty still racing? He's gone 2, 3, 4 laps down. And at that time Kyle's of age. My brother Rusty, who NASCAR champion, 50 something wins, Hall of Famer. So Rusty has the right to say it, and I listened to him. He said, Hearn, you got to let these guys get it out of their system. And Rusty quit too early. But I said, brother, no, you didn't. Because you won the last year of your career. And you made it in the chase for the championship, which that's what it was called at that time. So, when do you retire? I believe that, like myself, I've taken everybody and I've taken my body. My brain is like, yeah, you can do it. You can still kick their ass. My brain says that. My body, 2 torn tendons, got a floater in this side. I'm starting to fall apart. And sometimes you got to admit to yourself, Mark Martin. Mark, he started having to wear glasses. And then here's the other thing. The older you get, the older everybody gets around you. All of a sudden you're not hip, or people start making fun of you because you're so damn old. They're like, damn, man, he's old. I mean, so you got to know, it's that Kenny Rogers song, right? You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. So that is an interesting discussion. So, in our timeline here on YouTube, and if you're listening on our podcast, when do you retire? Is it up to the athlete? We can even go in your workplace. Do you still got that 81-year-old person that's working in your office because their family doesn't care about them and they don't want to go home? Is it up to that person, to retire? I know it is. I know it's up to the individual. That's my opinion. It is up to that individual. But should there be somebody to pull them aside, go, look, I'm going to piss you off, but I love you. You really need to call it a day. I hurt my brother Rusty's feelings. This is sad for me to say. I told Rusty, I said, brother, when you're 50 years old and you're racing in NASCAR, everybody just starts making fun of you. And at that time, I was immature, like I am still. I'm still immature. But I used the word gross. When you're 50 years old and you're running in the NASCAR Cup Series, I said it was gross. But I'll take that back. Rusty said that on the David Letterman show. I was watching it. And Rusty said, my brother Kenny said, if you're 50 years old and you're running in the Cup Series in NASCAR, it's gross. And I went, oh, God, I wished I wouldn't have used that term. But in my opinion, if you're 50 years old and you're in the Cup Series, it's wrong. Okay? Now used to do it. It used to be done. But with the way athletics have got to now, and I've said this before, there is so much stuff that prolongs your career. it makes young athletes better than. I mean, we got people at 16 and 8. Look, remember they had to make a rule for Kyle Busch because he was almost winning cup races at 16. These kids are starting at 4 years old, but I just believe athletes retire earlier now. I don't think you go longer. I think you retire earlier. I think that the NASCAR athletes that have done it right, Jeff Gordon pushed it. He retired because of his back. Bobby Labonte, Bobby, had health issues. You look at, Jeff Burton. You look at Tony Stewart. You look at these drivers, they all retired in their early 40s, and that was unheard of. So when is the right time to retire? I say it's time to retire when you know it. And Kenny Schrader, I'll leave it like this. I said to Kenny Schrader, I said, Schrader, when do you think you're going to retire? And he said, the sport will tell you. I thought, what the hell does he mean by that? The sport will tell you. Sometimes it's, sometimes we want to be the greatest of all time. We want to shove it right up everybody's ass, right? We want to go against the grain. I'm the man, you're all dumb. But sometimes, sometimes it's cool to be the only right one. I get that. Sometimes you just got to go, hey, let them finish it off, right? 9 times out of 10, when you do what Tom Brady's doing or what Richard Petty or Mario or AJ, it just goes bad. It just goes bad. But you get a bye because you're great. Now, time does heal all wounds. If Tom Brady's known for comebacks. What are they? 3-4 now? 1-3, lost 4. I don't know where they're at, but they ain't good. And he's known for comebacks, so maybe he can make a comeback. But his receivers are dropping passes. I think the passes are there, but he lost Gronk. And remember what I said: the older you get, you start losing everything, right? You lose everybody around you. So, respond right here. When is the right time for an athlete to retire? I wish Tom would have retired after he won the Super Bowl because he could have been our hero. When he retires, 3 years later, we'll forget about this, where it all went bad, and he'll be our hero again. So I got a couple people I talk to, and I listen to my kids, and I think that's what you have to do. All right, then. Well, respond right here. Get into the conversation. Remember, we are on podcast now. Hope you're listening to Spotify or iTunes. Until next week, we're going to talk about who will win the NASCAR championship. And hey, I took a chance on this subject. I'm trying to become more worldly. Hey, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? Are you going to be 80 years old at your work? And you tell your boss, hey, I only want to come in 2 days a week, and they need you and they love you. Well, that's cool. But, you can't play two NFL games a year like you can at work. It's okay to be 80 years old at work because they allow you to come in when you want because they need you. When you're an athlete, you can't play 2 or 3 games. And when you're in NASCAR, it's kind of hard to run 1 or 2 races. So there is a difference, in the workplace and being a professional athlete. All right. Until next week, Herminator, Kenny Wallace Show rolls on.